Good morning and welcome to the latest Irish Rural Link edition webinar, and this time it's titled Rural Innovation. The last few weeks we've been talking a great deal about COVID, and we know that COVID is not going away, unfortunately, and we know it's going to influence so many things. Leo Varadkar said it will hasten the change that he said was coming anyway. Well, let's see about that. But certainly the changes, as far as we in Irish Rural Link are concerned, will be fundamental. And we have to ask the question, how are we going to prepare ourselves in terms of ensuring that the health services, that the jobs, that the social, economic and well-being of our communities is protected? Some people seem to think it's an opportunity. We don't want this kind of opportunity. Any opportunity that threatens our lives is not much, to be blunt. But on the other hand, we have found ourselves isolating. We have found ourselves working from home. We've seen the cats running across the Zoom meetings and all of that. And we've kind of gotten used to that sort of way of working. It's challenging employers. It's challenging large companies. It's challenging government. And rural innovation, as far as I'm concerned, no more than innovation that will happen as a result of this, has got to be thought about and spoke about. So this morning we have an excellent panel to do exactly that. I'm starting with Clodagh Barry, who runs a cluster centre. She's an executive coach and a business owner and a mentor who specialises in innovation and enterprise and human potential. She has a long experience in trying to encourage people, especially those in the innovation area, in the employment area, in the jobs area. She's also worked on a number of EU projects, Robismo and other panels, and certainly will definitely begin today's discussion by setting the scene. I welcome Elaine Moyles. Elaine comes from that famous county called Mayo. She's the local enterprise officer. And as you know, there are local enterprise offices in every county, and probably more, and Elaine will explain that. As you know, she manages a range of complementary supports to entrepreneurs and budding entrepreneurs, and I suppose should be maybe a first point of call for many people who are thinking, you know, here's a new idea. And even the famous mask, I'll show one here. We might this time next year, it might be a very different idea, and the first person that comes up with a new, friendlier type of mask that doesn't cloud our glasses might actually have a good business going. So you'll go to Elaine for that and her colleagues. And finally, I want to sincerely welcome a man I know very well, Stephen Grant of Grant Engineering in Burr. And if you want to talk about innovation, Stephen is actually, in my opinion, and it's only my personal opinion, but I think it's shared, is the father of innovation. Grant Engineering has managed to revolutionize the whole area of heating, domestic heating in particular, develop boilers that are always at the cutting edge. And he has managed to keep markets and keep many people employed over a long period and continue successfully in Burr, an entity which provides jobs in an area that would be regarded as extremely rural. So I think we have a lot to learn from Stephen this morning. So those of you who have joined in, thank you very much. Please, you will see at the end of your screen a button called Questions and Answers. We need to hear your questions. This is your opportunity to ask those questions, and we will do our level best to get to them as much as possible. This morning, it's an informal discussion. It's about solutions. So let's think like that. So Clodagh, thank you, as I said, for joining us. You are a mentor. You meet people, I'm sure, every day who have ideas, etc. If you were to set the innovation scene, just for the benefit of those coming into us this morning, how would you outline it?
Okay. Thanks, Seamus. Good morning to everyone. It's really great to be here today. And thanks to Seamus and Irish Rural Link for having this conversation. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm here to listen and I'm here to learn as well. So I'd like us today to consider a holistic and a long-term view to where we need to go for rural innovation. And before we dive right in, I want to ask each one of us attending and on the panel to take a moment, just 10 seconds, and write down, what do you mean by rural innovation? Okay. And if people want, they can share it in the chat box. So what I'm going to look at today is what is happening beyond our rural innovation landscape, and then what's happening within our own innovation landscape. So where we are to look to the EU, we know that there's a recovery plan going on at Europe, Next Generation EU, there's 750 billion in that plan. It's an economic instrument, it's to recover and to grow stronger. And the focus of this is on local development. So these words are key: protection of the environment, jobs, and local cohesion. So there's two local words in there. The key topics are the social economy, digital economy, green economy, and skills. Again, they're key topics that we can all be responding to, participating in, contributing to. Key messages from Europe are that we need to collectively concentrate on everyone's interest. So it's more than just jobs, it respects people and the planet. More than 40% of European companies will be digitized very soon. We have to focus on economies that put people first. We are contributors to the local and to the regional economies. Our SME base has all been affected. Altogether, 90% of the value-added business in the EU is with SMEs. We need ecosystems that are interconnected. We need holistic systems. Each member system needs to identify its priority. The national governments are working on national reform programs. And what they're doing now, and what we need to do as well, is to build dialogue, allow the exchange. We need to propose ideas. We need to get connected and take this full of the system view. So where we are nationally with regards to rural innovation, we have the Impact Innovation Fund from Intertrade Ireland. We have the EU Bioeconomy funds. The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, at this time has a call out for the National Waste Prevention Programme. We have EIP Agri, we have Enterprise Ireland, the Competitive Start Fund, we have LEOs, COVID-19, sports, Brexit supports, trading online vouchers. We have leader development organisations. We have Utheros, who's got a raft of GTech hubs and innovation happening in the marine. We have the Atlantic Economic Corridor, with folk enterprise north and south across the Western region. And in looking at Irish Rural Link, we have Rubismo. We have practical business examples and tools from around Europe on how to create economic success in your doorstep. It's proven by another recipe. So we can see there's no shortage of funding, schemes, or activity in the innovation space. So where we are now to step into the local views, we've gone from the EU, we've gone to national, and now we're to step into the local view. Everyone attending here today has examples of innovation at local level. They're driving open doors in our villages, in our towns, imitating population, in bringing in visitors, and creating local economy. We have the Change Agency County Longford, the Hub in Headford, Monaghan Mushrooms using their mushroom waste to create funguschain.eu. You designing with communities in Dingle. We have communities gathering plastic waste from beaches, and what do we need to do with that? Rural Ireland is awash with communities, SMEs, entrepreneurs and innovators producing in their locality.
Okay.
We're reaching these 1,000 and more small bonfires, and we're very grateful to those rural innovators.
Okay,
and then
Claudia, I'll come in here. Sorry, Claudia. I'll give the old internet a rest here because there's a little bit of breaking up there. So we'll give you a chance to come back later. So one of the great challenges, Stephen, of course, is exactly sometimes the internet doesn't work and sometimes the whole thing doesn't work. But with grant engineering, you certainly, in my opinion, pioneered the whole area of innovation and setting up a business in a rural area. Can you tell us about grant engineering?
Well, I can, yes. I'll tell you from, I suppose, where we are today and then work back a little bit. Today we're based in Crinkle in Burr, the site of an old British military barracks, but none of that is left now. It's all a brand new state-of-the-art building. We employ around 350 people on site. We run 24 hours a day, 6 days a week. We have a base in the UK, wholly owned subsidiary, Grant UK. We employ about 80 people there. We have another base in France, just a small number of people there. Then we supply products to various countries, Greece, Denmark, Finland, New Zealand, and so on. And the Irish market, then Ireland and UK, we'd have about probably slightly in excess of 50% of the entire oil boiler market in that district. We have about 120 oil boiler products that we supply in different outputs, etc. And then we have a full range of pellet boilers, which are all designed in-house. And then we supply a full range of air source heat pumps that we import from Japan. And we also supply aluminium radiators, underfloor heating systems, fan convectors. And then the other thing we do is full in-house heating design. So we have technicians that if you send in your plan, we'll do the full specification, give you the exact requirement for every room, the size of boiler or heat pump, etc. We also have a range of solar panels and hot water cylinders, the complete package and control systems and all that. Within the factory then we have a full R&D department, electronic engineers as well as technicians. It's about 10 or 11 people involved in that area, which I'm deeply involved myself. I spend all my time working in R&D and coming up with ideas and so on. So we've also developed a full range of hybrid systems where we see the future going, where people want to fit heat pumps in conjunction with an oil boiler or gas boiler, because to upgrade your home to the full requirement for a heat pump to be able to heat it, it can cost 50 or 60,000. So we have systems that will alleviate that. And we're developing further other systems that are integrated into either oil, gas or solid fuel type systems in conjunction with heat pumps. And as I say, all the R&D is done. It's a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility as well. We've got all the best of automatic bin centers, laser systems, powder coating plants, sort of everything that's there. Like we were the first people to introduce a full range of condensing oil boilers onto the Irish and UK market, which I designed myself. I think over the period since I started innovation in the sort of late 70s, early 80s, I've held about 60 patents. Obviously, a lot of them have expired now, so anything that's over 20 years old is gone. But we're continually innovating and sort of coming up with new ideas, and sort of I'm strongly driven by that desire to be better and be also conscious of the environment. We're working at the moment with biofuels, looking at different types of fuels. There's a HVO, which is produced by Neste in Finland, and that is able to operate on our appliances at 100% of this HVO. Test work has been carried out on that and it works perfectly well on that. There's another fuel then which we've been testing, which is GTL. Not many people would have heard of this. It's gas to liquid. It's natural gas turned into a liquid fuel, which is diesel or kerosene or lubricating oils, so that you can burn this and it's the same as burning natural gas. And also working with another company that's recycling plastic and turning that back into fuels. So there's a lot happening within that field, you know. So, but I mean, the company, I suppose, wasn't always like this, and it had to start somewhere. So we started back in the late 70s. I was a plumber, installing heating and plumbing. And at the time, the first oil crisis came and oil wasn't available. So I hadn't really much business there. And so I decided to look at open fire back boilers, and I installed a few that were made in the UK and maybe one or two in Ireland, and I found them to be, you know, particularly poor at poor efficiency and so on. So I decided to develop first the twin flue boiler, which was squared out type twin flue boiler, which was sort of 2 or 3 times better than anything that was there at the time, and was extremely successful. And basically that I was making a boiler at night in a friend's workshop and installing it the next day. and eventually then moved on to selling it through a couple of outlets. And then I developed from there a triple pass, which became sort of famous, the Grand Triple Pass back boilers. People used to meet me and say, "Are you the man that made the triple bypass boilers?" So, but it grew on from there, and then into oil, etc., and then developed into building the first phase of the factory.
Thank you, Steve. Like I think you know, if anybody who reads the biography of Steve Jobs, he started in the back kitchen or in the garage, I think, as well. And you know, and certainly, Stephen, you've built a very, very successful company. I suppose, Elaine, I know that you might be meeting people like the future Stephen Grants or people like that. So the Leos are there, and you do a lot of good work. So tell us about, for example, in Mayo and the rest of them, how you manage these budding people, not just in jobs, but also in various ideas that they might have.
Thanks, Seamus, and thank you also for having me on today to speak on behalf of the Leos. And I won't keep it very Mayo-centric. I'll try and talk as much nationally as well, as I know the audiences from all around. So in relation to your question about what do we do as Leos in terms of helping anybody thinking of setting up a business or are in business now to think about innovating and doing something differently. It's very simple. There's a Leo office based in every county. There's a few in different counties, like let's say, there's a few in the county, like let's say Dublin, depending on population. But we're here for you to have a chat with us in a confidential manner to talk through the ideas that you may have. And what we will do then is we will try and mold our supports around what you would need through the different stages you'll go through. So let's say somebody comes into us and they have a business idea, or they have an idea in which that they want to try and develop a product. What happens quite a lot is we hear the question, am I mad to be doing this? So some people actually they want to have somebody to chat to and chat through that first concept that they have, because they could be like that where maybe Stephen started out just in a room by themselves trying to figure out how this all works, and they need that bit of support to talk through how do you finance this, how do you actually build a prototype, where do you go to get prototypes built, where do you go to get the testing done. So what we would focus on then is firstly talking through and fleshing out that idea as best we can here in the Leos. We can then match a person with an experienced mentor that can guide them through the steps required to either make a prototype or get the prototype developed, link them in possibly with third level institutes in their region that can do such work for them. And that's very much focused on the prototype element. We can also have mentors that can help with how you would go about financing a startup or an established business to augment their product offering. We can then follow that up with a range of financial grant supports depending on the area that the idea is entering into the sector. So more specifically, let's say for the Leo supports, it usually is focused on the manufacturing side or the internationally traded services side of things. So we could then help somebody, let's say, buy a new machine that can help them augment their current product offering if they're an established business, or perhaps they're a startup business and they need specific consultancy support or some sort of support to figure out the steps that they need to take in order to get established. Then there are various different types of supports as well from different agencies, and we can be a signpost to them too. The likes of innovation vouchers through Enterprise Ireland or the Agile Innovation Grant as well that can actually be delivered through the Leos, that's Enterprise Ireland linked, which is for larger scale innovation projects. So what I can do is I can always quickly run through these, but I won't go through every single list of the grants and products and whatnot, but any ones you want to maybe question me on a little bit further.
Right.
But the main message is really we're here to chat, we're here to talk, and we're your local contact, we're your local point, and there's a Leo in every county.
And again, those of you listening in, now is your time to ask questions. I wonder, Clodagh, you know, when our Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, talks about this as an opportunity, that was change will be accelerated and it's coming, and you're mentoring people. What would you think? What should be a priority for somebody coming in now, in terms of innovating and trying to develop something? Is it just enterprise or is it wider? And what would your advice be to people listening in?
Yeah, I think it's wider than that, Seamus. I think we have to take this opportunity to look at this whole system in a new way. So we see where Stephen has come from with regards to innovation and his persistence since 1970 in pursuing that. We see the raft of enterprise supports, and the LEO systems are excellent. But this is all individual responses in our locality. So how are we going to make a systemic change? How are we going to ensure that we're resilient? So we don't have the densification of that geography. So how are we going to connect our startups? How are we going to scale them up? How are we going to ask the system to create an innovation ecosystem whereby R&D is connected to the bigger corporates? Local and national government is buying from SMEs. That these are these innovations that you're seeing can be taken and scaled up and tested by the public and by the private system. We need to build a pipeline. We need to bring investors to the table. We can help each other to access new markets. So if I went to Stephen today, I'm sure there's work that we could do together around the SME. So how do we create these connections and these conversations? We're all busy doing, Seamus, and change is now forced upon us. But it has become the necessity, yeah? And we're in the headwind of transformation and disruption. It is a crisis, but go back to Stephen's point in 1970, it also represents the potential, right? And what is the new way of being that best serves rural innovation going forward? How do we develop a fabric of innovation, right? These stress factors, and they're going to get stronger, there's going to be more tension, more fragmentation, more stress. How do we maintain our rural resilience and move through this uncertainty? It's scary, but it's also interesting.
And Clodagh, you're certainly posing the questions in terms of that. Stephen, you were, when you started out, let's say a younger man than you are now, we'll be nice and say that, and you set up you had this idea. Did anybody tell you you were mad or crazy? And what sort of supports do you, looking back, do you think you got when you started out?
Very little in the very beginning. We had several meetings with the IDA. They had their office in Athlone, and we had several meetings with them, and at different workshops where they had workshops in the evenings in hotel rooms and etc. And I wasn't having any luck. And then just out of the blue, I was operating out of a rented premises, which was the old workhouse in Burr, when a representative of the IDA drove into the yard, and Eugene O'Callaghan from Athlone, and he said, "Stephen, we're going to give you some money." So I mean, that really was, an absolutely godsend. That put us on a different light, and with that, and being able to borrow some money from AIB in Burr, I was able to actually then buy a piece of land in Crinkle where the factory is now, and build the first phase. So while initially it didn't look like it was getting much help, but it did come, and gave us a great start.
And in terms of coming up with an idea, how did you find difficulty in communicating that idea to the likes of IDA or even the market? I mean, I'm sure you were looking for a market as well. How did you find, what was the learning there in terms of communicating what you were trying to do?
Well, I think what I was doing at the time was supplying a product to the market, and the market was ripe for the product. I mean, when I developed the backwater, to give myself work so that I'd have something to do the next day. It wasn't really any grandiose idea that I'm going to be a big company or manufacturing these on a great scale. It was the fact that I'd have no work unless I made this backwater that was better than anything else. So then, let's say when I introduced that to the market, it actually grew legs very quickly because it was the only one of its kind that worked, and the demand was incredibly strong for it. So I didn't really have to go out and sell it hard at all. It sold itself very quickly.
So there was a good bit of work on the innovation. There's a few questions coming in. I think you might see them, Elaine, and we'll deal with those questions in a second. I know Richard Galvin does Mayo and Leo support social entrepreneurs, and I think I want to look at that, Elaine, in a wider sense. Everybody thinks, I suppose, of the product as Stephen has pointed out. But this whole social entrepreneur, this social enterprise is a whole new game. So can you take that question, Elaine, and expand on it?
Sure. So the main focus of the Leos is purely commercial. So we would support businesses that are either sole traders, partnerships, or limited companies. However, we can support social enterprises that have a very strong commercial domain. So if there is an element of it that's pretty much focused on making a significant turnover that's reinvested back into the business for a social purpose or for the benefit of the community, but very strong in that regard, we could support a business like that. I think at the moment it's quite tricky because it falls underneath sometimes their community groups that would have, it's mostly for the benefit of a community, but that it'd be operating on, let's say, maybe selling some food produce, etc. You would find, though, that there would be very strong social enterprises, perhaps even in cities, that would have, let's say, a cafe that has produce that they get from local farmers, trying to keep that natural cycle with their products in it. So those sorts of types of businesses could be supported through the Leos. So it very much focuses on case by case, but I would always suggest if there is anybody that wants to set up any type of business and that they have a commercial focus, to come to the local enterprise office and we can talk through their supports, and we can support social enterprises as long as there's a commercial domain.
And I mean, Claude, I mean, that whole, like, I suppose in Irish Rural Link, we would see social enterprise as one of the upcoming innovations, because if you look at the last few weeks, we were involved along with the Wheel in mobilizing volunteers all around the country. People like Michael Dignan in Offaly and Anthony Daly and a whole range of people got involved, and they discovered that there was a range of situations in rural areas which required a serious assistance. People living alone, people needing services delivered, people not able to go out, people whose transport no longer available for various reasons, health and otherwise. So all of this sometimes is serviced by social enterprise. Claudia, is there a map here that we could ask people looking in at this to develop a social enterprise industry, or even a business idea, or even a non-for-profit idea?
Yeah. I think we really, Seamus, I think we really have to get serious about social enterprise. It's one of the fastest growing sectors across Europe. It is resident in its locality. It cannot be moved, it cannot be changed. It's brought about by collective local action. And we have a case, so we're in a good place and we're getting better, but with more to do, and we need to accelerate that. We need to bring, so whether it's social enterprise or the green economy, both of those, we need to have policy, and we need to have investment at the table. We need to have this recognised as a legal entity. So how are they represented? Are they a CNG, or how do they set themselves up? So they, the whole opportunities around plastics. Stephen is doing it, recycling, repurposing, repair, sustainable design, sustainable tourism. It's all on offer to our local community. So it's not about geography, it's about where you are and how you want to contribute. But in order to do that, we have to put in a framework around social enterprise, around the green economy, because these are investment proposals that don't operate in the same way that the traditional system operates.
And Claude, Donna Cleary is coming in with a kind of a comment which I think makes sense. She says social enterprises should be referred to local development companies. Would you agree with that?
I think we need a whole of the system. So we have the local development companies, they're doing excellent work. Irish Rural Link is doing excellent work in this space. The LEOs are doing great work in this space. So we all have a part to play in this, but we don't have that overarching infrastructure that says, and not to say that one person is doing the training or one person is doing the capacity building, but we need to see if we were to build this collectively. So if we were to ask ourselves different questions, and it's not, you know, who owns a social enterprise space, but what we need to, Seamus, we need to train in it, we need to educate in it, we need to have policy, we need to have investment proposals, and we need to see this as a valid, this is one of the fastest growing sectors in Europe. So where we build a cohesive, collective, coordinated infrastructure around this, we only have to look to Scotland. We can, the demand for it is already there. So the communities already want this, individuals want this. So we have to respond to what's there. So we could pivot very quickly. And if we were to bring in all of those different, the R&D in that space, support that up with the evidence, the impact measuring, you know, we're measuring job creation. We need to look at our metrics, James. How are we measuring the contribution to the caring, right? So part of this COVID-19 and what we've moved through, we see in Europe now, and from the cluster point of view, they're saying you cannot have a response to this biosecurity issue without having communities involved. So how do we measure that? So all of our language now is around set up for the industrial ecosystem, but we need to set it up now for the social ecosystem.
Okay.
We're all responsible. Yeah.
Stephen, an interesting question, Matt Carty. Do any of the panelists feel there's any legislative gaps that, if filled, would assist the development of social enterprise, particularly in rural communities? I suppose that's an interesting question. Now, I know, I don't know, Stephen, whether you would say what you're doing is social enterprise, but there is a serious question here, legislative requirements. I know you've had planning and you've had all sorts of issues to resolve in many ways you've written the book in terms of being a pioneer for others. So again, looking at the legislative change, particularly setting up in rural companies, and I'll give you one kind of thing that we've often heard from other innovators like yourself is the general thrust of legislation is to try and get people to set up in the large cities and don't set up in rural areas. What's your reaction to that kind of thinking?
Well, I think we didn't experience any problems with planning certainly on the site in Crinkle. I mean, the only legislation then that we would come under obviously is all the standard health and safety and all the standard requirements of running a business. And then with all our products, they all come under legislation from EU directives, etc. So they would be strongly adhered to and so on. I suppose one comment that I might make is that we've had visitors from time to time come into the factory, maybe from other countries or from Dublin, and they look around the factory and think, wow, my God, I couldn't visualize a sophisticated plant like this down in the sticks. You know, think, my God, what do you think we are? You know, a person's brain is the same in Bor as it is in Dublin or Belfast or London or anywhere else. You know, it's a little bit of a shock when somebody makes a statement like that. You know?
Yeah, I think
we haven't had any bad experiences, to be honest. I've never had any bad experience as far as legislation or anything like that's been.
So you really are saying to people listening in, you know, you just try and get your idea right, do the work, in other words, and work with the agencies, work with the banks, work with whoever you have to work to make it happen. I think that's what you're saying, you know.
Correct, yes. And I mean, it's the main thing, I think, in innovation is have a product that you have faith in, do your research, and it's a lot easier to do your research today than it was when I was starting out, because there was no internet, there was no way of checking out what was there. Today it's a lot easier. You come up with an idea, you can spend a couple of days Googling it and find out if it's been there before, etc. So, you know, it's a cheaper way to do it. When I started out, you had to go to a patent agent, spend a lot of money for them to do a deep research into it. So, you know, it's easier today in that light, yes.
Elaine, somebody comes into you with an idea. it's half baked probably. It probably needs a bit of work. And what's the, you'll probably be thinking of projects that were succeeded and successful, and how they developed from almost no hope to quite success. So in that context, what do you have to say to them? On the one hand, not to put them completely off, and on the other hand, to try and see, is there something there?
Well, we always approach every interaction with clients as a collaborative process and a long-term process. So it's not for us to say, oh, that's a bad idea or a good idea, because who knows what it'll morph into, who knows what it'll grow into. What we do is try and explore all of the avenues in which to make sure that it can be successful. So is the market research done? Have you segmented your client base, your customer base? Do you understand the requirements that you would need in order to get set up in this particular sector? So initially, even with ourselves here in the Leos, we would explore those questions and ask probing questions to flesh it out as much as we can. And then I know I keep reiterating it, but mentoring is so important. Getting to speak to professional consultants. I know in Mayo it is for free. In other Leos there might be a small charge, but it's a valuable resource to have, to speak with somebody in the sector you're thinking of entering, or somebody from a strong financial background to help you map out your cash flow projections of how much you'd need to turn over on X date to make sure you break even. Or even just back to the idea generation, throwing ideas out there and seeing what sticks. So for us, we really do take a collaborative approach. Some of our most successful client companies, let's say in the Leo, I would have worked with them for 5 years before they sold a product. You know, we take a long-term approach. We're not here for, oh, well, you haven't got your business plan perfectly correct. Well, then that's, apologies, you know, you need to come back to us when it's done. We're the people you come to get that done. I might actually quickly take some of the questions as well, if that's all right, just to quickly answer some of them. Just in relation to Leo representatives overseas, the Leos are for local and they're for your county specifically. So we could only help fund businesses that's based in the county, but Enterprise Ireland is the agency that would have an international reach, and they would have offices based in different countries. But what we could do is, as Leos, if you needed access to the market research centres that would have quite a library of industrial reports and journals, we can provide that access to you through the Enterprise Ireland Market Research Centres to start your research on accessing an export market. Equally, we work with the Irish Patents Office to help with getting the information out there about what you need to do to trademark or patent your product. And once again, back to the mentoring, that depending on the Leos, there may be help there to signpost you in the direction of what you would need to do to get that up and running. I can also give some examples as well about projects that we have supported from a Mayo context and what we would do for idea generation. But I could quickly just run through some of the other questions about it from a Leo perspective. So I suppose there is a lot about the urban-rural divide. And it goes back to the ideas or the companies we can show from a Mayo perspective that we have supported. Mayo is a very innovative county because we have to be, because of necessity. You know, you have to nearly set up and do it yourself, really. And I think that attitude is very much prevalent in rural communities, and particular in Mayo. So for example, some of the businesses that we have supported that would be quite innovative and have innovated, they don't just make one product and that's it. Just like Stephen said, you're always constantly growing and changing and thinking and looking and adapting. Big Red Barn would be an example of this, that started out as an events management company in about 2014. And we worked with them over the years to now that they make modular homes. They're exporting to countries all over the world. They're up to an Enterprise Ireland level client. And they are events company, modular homes, and can make any type of modular building for you, as well as the big famous Big Red Barn for events. Even just if you, at the last National Ploughing Championships, they put up their modular home at the event, and thousands of people walked through the house there. But initially they would have started off as a services-based business, and we helped them pivot and think about, well, what else would you want this business to grow into? So we're very hands-on and we're very one-on-one with business people that want to try and explore what are the options for you. And then in terms of idea generation, we would run start your own business programs and lots of training programs at the moment to help you flesh out your idea, as well as competitions for idea generation, like Ireland's Best Young Entrepreneur. And then coming to the innovation that actually agencies and government bodies would also need to focus on innovation. In no more so than COVID has really pivoted what we have tried to do in the Leo. Like, let's say for the past couple of months, all of our training programs have gone online, and that's one small piece, but that's something that perhaps could help with the regional imbalance, where more people can maybe access our Start Your Own Business program online now, and it could start the idea generation a little bit more. It's a bit more flexible, and it goes around people's timetables rather than having to drive to Castlebar, let's say, from Belmullet to attend it.
Thanks. Clodagh, again, going back to, I suppose, the business in particularly, you've some knowledge of the European projects and some of that. You know, has Europe and the EU got a role here in supporting the very small, especially innovation? I mean, there's one thing supporting the existing small business, which of course is important, but innovation can often be a lot of money spent and nothing afterwards. So are there opportunities there?
Yeah, and few things in that, Seamus. I think Europe has a role, I think we have a role, okay? So just in hearing what Stephen and Tora said there, you know, imagine, you know, whoever's on this call, with 150 people on this call today, and we have those innovations and we have those micros, companies and SMEs, and the need for local services, and we had access to Stephen for mentoring, and with access to me for STEM mentoring, and with access to me, Leo. You know, we need to build collective conversations, and we need to take responsibility, and we need to do that ourselves. So we can always point to somebody else's fault and the division and what we need to do. We need to change the narrative, right? Stephen, we need to have confidence. So when somebody comes down and says, Jesus, look at what you've got in this backward place, and I didn't even expect there to be a road in here, say, really? Okay, well, now you know, so you probably should come down here more often. And I think COVID-19 has given us that platform on which we can say we are open and alive and well, and we're actually going to reform and recast how we're doing this, and we're going to do it collectively and together. So Seamus, if you were to look at a program, I was thinking about this, if you were to look at a program like Horizon 2020, okay, and the three streams of it, so you had your first stream, which was around the experts, the second stream, which was around SMEs, and that was brilliant for SMEs who never had a chance to participate in these European programs because they didn't have the scale or the capacity. They could then do it. And the third stream, I think, is really important for us in rural innovation and in Ireland. So Dublin is only sustainable where we are sustainable. So we have an equivalent relationship here. So if you were to look at societal challenges, Horizon 2020, so if this is around our social economy, social entrepreneurs, green economy, circular economy, farmers, fuels, land, our marine resources, so we're only on the edge of what we're to do in our marine, we could have a societal challenges for Ireland that mandates that whatever the challenges that we're presenting, and put together a framework platform that that there is community involved, the SMEs are involved, the Stephen types of companies, the FDI companies are involved, the R&D and the academics are involved. Because mostly we're set up in silos systems, and that doesn't allow all of the assets. So if we were to gather the assets of who's on this call this morning, we could do a lot in 12 months, and if that's what we were tasked with to do. So, and we need to look at our success factors, Seamus. So how are we measuring success? That we've employed 5 people. Actually, that we've kept 5 people part-time employed, that we've got people out of the home, that we've cared for 10 people, that saved them going into other systems that are different cost base. So we definitely need to look at our measurements of success. So if you're an innovator, an entrepreneur, it's the 3rd time that you go at it, usually, that not always the case, that's when you're successful. And then if we were to look to Rubismo, all of the business models there, or to look to Finland, right? They were in the exact same place we were in 2008. they mandated that every graduate left their colleges with a business set up. So they weren't going looking for a job. So imagine if all of our rural fabric, every student that is leaving their place of study, whether that's Mount Value College or GMIT or third level at Trinity, that they had their business set up. Then they chose if they're going to get a job or if they're going to pursue their own company.
Okay.
So there's a lot that we can learn already there.
All right. I know to hear that Kevin Hino, old friend of Irish Rural Link, he just notes that there's a firm of patent attorneys in Galway City, the only ones on the West Coast. So as far as he's aware, their HQ are based in London and they established in Galway about 5 years ago. An interesting innovation indeed. And I suppose, Stephen, looking at, you know, recruitment and people available, you do a lot of high-skilled people who work for you. Is there the right education system, the right supply of people you need to work for you, or are you relatively happy that those people are looked after and available and trained?
Yeah, well, I think the skill levels are there, but for our particular industry, and I think it will be typical of all industries, you take somebody in as a graduate or whatever, or after they've done their full university education, and then there has to be a level of training within your own industry. You're not going to get somebody that walk in and hit the ground running and be able to do exactly what you want done, you know. So there has to be an easing into the position and a learning curve, and that applies, I think, in most industries, I would think.
And is that training adaptive and quickly? You know, I know your company, you're probably not making stuff you made maybe 20 years ago because it's no longer fits the purpose. It's adapted, it's changed. So is the education and training skills thing keeping up with that, do you think?
Well, in my industry, it is, because most of the innovation comes from, a lot of it comes from myself actually, and a couple of very close people with me in the R&D side. I mean, it's basically, I suppose, to get your head around what you want to do and get it onto just a sheet of paper first, and get your concept, and then flesh it out from there. We've taken on, as I say, a couple of electronic engineers recently now, where we're doing a lot more controlled systems, and obviously as time moves on, the whole heating industry and our industry has moved much more into electronics and remote controls and so on, and apps and so on. So it's all changing from that point of view. From the hard sort of metalwork side, there's a lot of changes as well. But for example, the oil boilers that we designed, the first condensing boilers in 2001, 2002, we're still making the exact same boiler today, and in big numbers. So that hasn't changed. But we've moved in obviously to the biomass and
yeah. Elaine, in terms of access to, Stephen talked about R&D, and obviously they have a very strong sense of R&D in their area. Now, irrespective of what the idea is, research and development is, so what sort of supports are there in terms of R&D if people come into you that they can get help from?
Well, it's a key focus at the moment for pretty much all enterprise agencies to try and help SMEs and micro businesses become more competitive, productive and efficient. So if we want to start maybe talking it on a tiered basis, let's say if somebody had an initial idea or they needed to prove some of the concepts of the idea, they could avail of an innovation voucher up to €5,000 ex-VAT through Enterprise Ireland that would link you with the third level institute that could carry out some of the work that you would need for your prototype development. That gets you to a certain level then where maybe it's testing the strength of the product or even just actually building the product, some parts of that. You could then perhaps come to your local enterprise office if it's a manufacturing or an internationally traded services type of business, and you could avail of a feasibility study. So this is kind of the next stage where it looks a little bit more into the viability of that product or service. So that can be all encompassing.
And I take it these are easily accessible. I mean, you know the way people are impatient, and sometimes maybe that impatience is dangerous, but still they're looking for, you know, I want to move with this. Is it
Yeah.
quickly accessible?
Well, the innovation vouchers has a range of calls throughout the year for the technically the fully funded one, the ex-VAT part. So they will be specific calls throughout the year. You could always apply for the innovation voucher if you wanted to cover the 50% funding. So that's more of a step up. So it's 5,000 from Enterprise Ireland, 5,000 from yourself. The feasibility studies, there is an application process and an external evaluation committee, as with most grants, to make sure, verify that all due diligence is done. However, from a LEO perspective, you'd be talking weeks, not months, in terms of getting that across the line. If you're at that stage of, you have the concept, you've done a bit of the market research, you know, you think that there is a kernel of an idea there. You don't have to have everything done, but you have to at least have, you know, some of the basis. So that's why you'd nearly have the mentoring already completed, or you'd have the market research centre, maybe with Enterprise Ireland, you'd have done some fact finding, and then you'd come to us to say, I want to invest in this, can you help me with some of the costs too? And we would explore that and say, okay, a feasibility study could possibly help you with further market research, maybe professionally so, you know, like a third-party consultant. More technical product prototype development, usually around that stress testing element. And even if it's just literally doing some, you know, focus group testing, things like that, to really test out, is this product going to be worthwhile to keep going?
And
so
quickly, Elaine, there's a quick question there, and I'll come to Claude in a second. Do you have to be a limited company to get the innovation voucher? Is there any conditions to getting an innovation voucher?
So for an innovation voucher, you do actually have to be set up as a limited company. For any of the grants through the local enterprise offices, once again, we're more county focused. You can be a sole trader, partnership, and limited company. So you wouldn't need to be a limited company for a feasibility study. And perhaps that's a better option for you rather than an innovation voucher. With an innovation voucher, though, you're covering the VAT costs of the work. With the feasibility study, we can cover up to 60% ex-VAT of the costs to a maximum of 15 grand. So you would technically have to pay the full amount first and then recoup it from ourselves after being approved. That would then get you up to a stage of whether or not you want to continue and properly invest in the product or the service. We could further help then with what's called a priming grant or a business expansion grant if you needed to buy maybe the machinery that you investigated a bit more to build your product, or further IT equipment that you may need for your service. But there is a lot more supports out there than just the LEOs that we can also point you in the direction of. In particular, the Agile Innovation Grant. It's a significant amount of funding, usually about 150 grand, to really investigate usually a more established business and whether they want to augment or adapt their current product offering or service. And just in the current climate and current context with everybody kind of having to rethink that, it is a good support. And come to your LEOs, we could probably help you with that application process if you're not an Enterprise Ireland client. And most crucially, it covers ongoing salary costs to investigate the R&D element, so internally. So if you wanted to put somebody on your team at the moment on that for 12 months to develop a new product, let's say you have that internal capability, but you just don't have the budget to give that amount of time over to it, you can cover the cost of that through the Agile Innovation Grant.
Thank you. There's lots of questions, Elaine. We'll come back to some of them, but thank you, Laura Tanian, for that. You have another one as well. Chris Hughes talks about the innovation vouchers cannot be utilised by charitable community groups, so or charitable. So that might be, that's not your fault, Elaine, but that might be something to look at. And there's a lot more. Clodagh, you know, like whether we like it or not, working from home has had its limitations, and we have a lot of debate about the use of technology. Stephen even is looking at it in his company in terms of recruiting digital or electronic engineers, and obviously that's kind of the future. What are you seeing in that area of innovation? Are we thinking rural in the innovation side here, and what do we need to do?
Yeah, and there's plenty happening in that, James. With a lot, we've seen a good bit around smart towns and smart villages coming through from Europe. So you know, we need to take a position on that. We can look at the social economies. There's loads of different streams, whether it's technology innovation, whether it's private, whether it's community innovation. So I think the fabric of the innovation system is really alive and well. And I think we actually, so all the conversations we're having here, I think we need to step back from it and see how do we organise and support that technology innovation. So yes, if we are challenged by broadband, do we need better broadband in every house? Yes, we're entitled to it. But if we had these broadband centres and hubs that we can link into within a 2-5 kilometre radius, you know, we have these GAA centres on our doorstep. So we have solutions, but we have to look at how we're purposing them, how we're using them, and how we're working together. So we're all performing to different metrics. We need to align, we need to get collaboration, we need to build trust and partnerships, which means that Irish Rural Link will join with Grant Engineering, will join with Leo Mayo, and we'll all put 10k into the pot, and then we'll go and look for this funding, and how can we do this together? And while we're saying we might be doing this at a nod, we're not doing that, James, and this would allow us to scale up. We have all of these individual pockets. We have these bonfires of brilliant activity individually across our rural region. Now we need to gather that collectively, and we need to have a conversation where we're stepping back from what we're trying to solve today and right now, and where we're joining hands and saying, well, what does rural innovation in Ireland in 2030 look like? And then what am I responsible for? And then collectively, how can we move towards that? And we need to go over and sit in the other person's shoes. So I need to travel around to the Leo and sit in their shoes. I need to travel into Stephen's business and sit in his shoes. And then I need to come back to my own place and say, right, okay, well, I can see what we all need to do here.
Elaine, I'm coming towards the end of this webinar, and as you can see, we're going to be running out of time. And it's not fair to ask you to become a minister in the morning, but but you have experience, and I know the Leos do tremendous work around the country, no question about that. What would you sort of gently maybe say to Minister Varadkar in the morning about improving, linking to Claude, I suppose, and what you were saying? What would you gently say to him about the next few years, given where we are? And he has asked for this as well.
Well, I think more and more so a regional economic recovery is required, focusing on what our strengths are in each region. We are all very different. So let's say in the West, we have a very strong medtech cluster in Galway, very strong agri-tech cluster here in Mayo and Pharma and Roscommon so as well. So it's about pivoting the supports and probably making them a little bit more balanced to what's going on in the region. At the moment, however, I am aware of the fact that there's quite a lot of activity going on in our department that the Leos are part of. Minister Varadkar is over the Leos, and we're focusing on those sorts of supports that maybe are a little bit more flexible and can adapt to the current needs of businesses. But from a wider context, I think it's about trying to figure out what we can do collaboratively, and it also needs to come from us too. So what do we agree on in the West region, let's say, that are our priorities going forward, and how do we come together to put large-scale funding applications through for let's say, the regional enterprise development funds through Enterprise Ireland, the urban regeneration developments funds. I think, for me, I think it's all about collaboration, and you have to get everybody on board to try and sing off the same hymn sheet in order to set those goals for yourselves, which I think will be coming through the regional enterprise plans as the third reincarnation coming soon. What I would say though is just to the questions that we didn't get through with the Q&A, please visit localenterprise.ie. That's our national website that gives all the contact details for all the Leos in the country, and just drop them an email, or even on Facebook, Twitter. We're very active on social media, usually all of them, if you wanted to ask any specific questions that I didn't get to, or maybe I didn't flesh out enough on any sort of supports. And look, if there's anybody at all that wants to contact me, even if you're not from Mayo, I would certainly chat to them too.
Thank you. You've been absolutely excellent. Claude, quickly, again, time is running out, but again, a gentle, hint to I think a minister who started very well. What would you suggest in a sentence to promote rural innovation at this stage?
Yeah, Seamus, I would suggest that we need to get broad and deep networks of people around a whole of the system approach. That's the one thing. We can catalyse the innovation ecosystem. We need to get our own house in order. We need to face this opportunity from a connected and a collaborative space, and we're better together. So there's no doubt about it, we can do this.
Thanks, Clodagh. Stephen, I'm leaving the last word to you. Again, you've done it, but you'd like to see a lot more doing it, and you'd like to see the Crinkles and all of those areas become hubs of business and innovation and jobs. So how would you say to the Minister this morning?
Well, I think is to, if somebody has a good idea, and it should be assessed correctly. And one of the things I'm thinking as we're speaking there is that there should be some type of panel set up to assess ideas rather than have them go all the way through grant applications and a lot of rigmarole, where if there was some panel of X amount of people that the idea could be put to them and say, look, evaluate this and see is it worthy of going forward before there's too much time lost on it, both by the applicant and by the different departments. But I do believe that Ireland has a great level of innovation. If you look at factories all over the country, like Dairy Master and ourselves, and companies that have in the most rural areas and have developed massive industries. So it can be done, and let everybody get out and do it. It's there to be done.
Thank you very much. You really are an inspiration, Clodagh. Thank you for joining us this morning. You certainly showed as a mentor, you know about this from a European perspective, you know about it. So hopefully people will contact you. Elaine, of course, you know, the LEOs, as I said, they really should be used, and you've been an excellent advocate of what they do to help people. And I think people should not be afraid of going into your offices, and as you invited, even talk to you, and you'll send them on the right road. Stephen, once again, thank you for giving up an hour, as well as the other guests this morning. I think people need to reinforce that Stephen Grant and people like him have done this. You mentioned Dairy Master and other companies. You've done it. There are plenty of social enterprises. I know Bernard Joyce is a good friend of ours. He came in there with some notes and questions. Social enterprises are doable as well. And I think in terms of innovation, we really have to listen to people like the guest this morning, and we have to say, things are changing. Things always change. And even in a plant like Grant's, the product will change from every so many years. The services will change in a rural area. COVID is going to come up with a whole range of new ideas that never occurred to us before and now suddenly seem important. So to you people and members of the community, the business community, politicians and all who joined us this morning, I sincerely thank you for doing that. This program will appear on YouTube channel that we've set up, where you can see all the other webinars that we've held in the last few weeks. Next week, the webinar will look at bioeconomy. And again, this is a massively growing area. Bioeconomy in terms of economic added value and prosperity is really the new kind of revolution in terms of not just jobs, but in well-being, etc. And certainly we know on the panel already, there's Patrick Barrett from the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine, James Gaffey with the Biorefinery and Gloss and EIP, and the Agri Project in Tralee. Certainly they will be joining us, and we may have surprises as well. To you who are members of Irish Rural Link, thank you for joining us. To you who are thinking of joining Irish Rural Link, we'd love you to do the same. Have a good morning. Think about the discussion. Look at the webinars on our channel. And to you, the guests, thanks again. Bye-bye.